Welcome to episode 22. 22 episodes of Sim Sundays. And you're actually at the new home of Sim Sundays because we got that magical YouTube handle this week. So we're at Sim Sundays on YouTube now, which is pretty amazing if you ask me. Tom is actually in America this week, so he's on my side of the pond, as they say. And where are you at? You're in Texas right now, right?
I think I'm in Texas. I'm in Austin. I've just spent Yes, it is. I spent a couple of days at COTA, and before that, we're in San Francisco. I've got jet lag, but I just about worked out what time our podcast was today, and we've made it. So thank God. But it's in a way it's kind of double-edged because we've never met. So Chris and I have never met personally, and yet we've worked together for 2 years on Grid Finder.
Yeah, I think it's past 2 years now. Yeah.
Oh yeah! Wow, it really is. Time flies. And yeah, it's the first time I've been to America in that time, and we haven't managed to see each other. But that's okay because we are going to see each other at Sim Expo this year,
I'm excited.
Cannot wait for. Yes. However, less about us, more about our guest. So I am very excited and very proud to introduce the sim racing cult icon and animated commentator that is George Morgan. Welcome to the show.
Big thank you. Thank you to both you, Tom, and Chris as well, and the whole Grid Finder team for bringing me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm very excited to get into the details about a specific trip that we mentioned just a little bit before the show, when we're trying not to talk to each other. But I want to hear the story about the magical place we call Monaco that I want to go to so badly.
Yeah, I mean,
it's been a journey for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, this year has been a bit of a blur in itself. I mean, I never fathomed that I'd be doing half the stuff that I've been doing this year. But I mean, Monaco, as Chris alluded to, was something else. I mean, it was almost stepping into Bizarro world, really. I mean, landing in Nice, then all of a sudden being escorted to a helicopter to the island of Monaco was just utterly surreal. I mean, the actual place itself was out of this world. The cars that were just parked in the street, you had Lamborghinis, Bentleys, Aston Martins, Ferraris, and from someone from a humble background such as myself, we don't see those kinds of cars in South Wales. We're not used to that kind of thing. So when we step into territory such as that, it's slightly bizarre, but amazing to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile today, just doing a little bit of pre-show research, and I mean, we're going to cover all this, right? But you've worked for V10R League, and you've done Formula One esports commentary, and you were in frickin' Monaco, like the Formula Regional European Championships you've commentated. This is all great stuff, right? But the thing that really stood out to me on your LinkedIn profile, which I think speaks volumes about you, is that on your LinkedIn profile, you've also got that you were a commentator at Race Spec, Esports, Formula Sim Racing, ORL, Apex. Veloce is quite big. PSGL, WOR. So you've kind of kept that history of being a stakeholder, like a part of the league racing history, and you haven't kind of put that away and hidden that because now it's Formula One and it's Monaco and it's helicopters.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, no, it sounds corny and cheesy, but everything to do with league racing. I mean, all that is part of me. I mean, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing unless I did all those things before. I mean, it built my foundation, and I always want to stay in touch and stay true to the league racing side and recognize it as well, because it's very important. Because not only you got to think, it's an avenue where people can grow. They can find that foundation, like I was so fortunate to do. And like even now today, I pop into the PSGL Discord and I wish the new commentators the best of luck on a new season, or if they have any questions they want to ask me, or if they want any advice, or if they want help with the stream settings, or if they want to just talk nonsense for half an hour, it just doesn't bother me. Just I like to stay involved in the community. I feel that we are very much in a community, and I think it's the right way to be, personally.
That's an interesting way to go about it, because like a lot of the time, let's take, I don't know, football. Well, I guess I'm talking American football, or we can talk about, soccer, as the rest of the world calls it, football, because it makes more sense because they play with their feet, but that's another subject altogether. But once you get to a certain point in a lot of sports or a lot of professions like that, it's almost like there's this invisible wall where the lower level people are like, oh, we can't talk to them anymore. They're at the next level. They're on the stage while we're in the crowd, and you keeping that relationship alive probably means more than you can even honestly say to those commentators. And how did you go from just, a small commentator that was doing league races and things like that? How did you actually get your, I guess, stepping stone to getting into the bigger stuff and getting the big, I guess, events?
Do you know what? I'd love to say that there was a formula or some sort of written script to the whole thing, but it just simply is not the case. I mean, I sort of fell into it by accident. Don't get me wrong; it was a pleasant surprise and a pleasant accident, to say the least. I obviously, like you say, I've been commentating leagues now for a good 4 years plus, really. And PSGL obviously went from strength to strength. I was part of the very foundation of the PC side of it, and I brought in all the esports drivers to compete into it. We very much turned PSGL into a hub of great talents, and also put in place something I think that was missing in many cases in terms of the fact that you could get the new drivers coming up that eventually want to compete in esports. They can compete with those top level drivers now, and it was great because obviously the teams then watch PSGL because they want to identify what talent they want to pick up for the new esports season, and it gives the ambition and drive to those young drivers who want to step up. And it also gives commentators a chance as well, because they're commentating on the best drivers in the world. Obviously, then the esports organizations are watching those competitions too, and the leagues. And it's really, really good, and it builds a very vibrant community, helps the community, and just makes it a little bit more than just some guys getting together, every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever day of the week it might be, and makes it really something special, I think. Yeah.
Why did you start commentating in the first place? Like, for your first league race, right? Whichever league that was with, presumably you were part of a Discord, maybe even a driver, and at some point they said, well, we need a commentator. What made you volunteer?
I honestly, again, there's no romantic story to it. It's literally, I was racing with just 4 of my friends in a league that we had just created just between us. There were no big ambitions to make. We're going to make this league the biggest thing in the world. It was just something to do as friends, and we used to meet up on a Friday night. I mean, I was never a fast driver. I mean, I was 2 seconds off the pace of everybody, and eventually I just got fed up with it. I'm fed up of getting beaten every Friday night. So I said, look, is there anything else I can do? And they said, George, why don't you commentate or something? Do that? Yes, yeah, sounds good to me. We'll try that. So we
Sorry, hang on. So you present that like it's like you're playing football with your mates, and they're like, George, why don't you just bring the oranges on at half time?
Yeah. Well, that's how it was. I mean, look, that's genuinely how it was. I mean, I was literally, we would get into a PlayStation chat between us, and I'd be like, oh guys, I can't be doing this. This is ruining me. And they said, well, just get into the commentary box and just do some commentary. And we had like like maybe one viewer a broadcast.
Sure.
I mean, what I will say is that obviously a lot of you guys will know that my signature start is pedal to the metal, and it's go 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 go. I actually started using that from that first thing, so I've had that since I first started. So that's never changed. In fact, there's a lot about my commentary that hasn't changed. I'd like to think it's a little bit more polished since the first time, as anything is. But yeah, no, that was simply it. And I just got the bug for it. Really enjoyed it. I mean, obviously, I grew up watching Formula One from '96, and when Damon Hill won the championship, I was a big Damon Hill fan back then. I had a Damon Hill Scalextrics with Michael Schumacher's Benetton as well that year for Christmas. When I was a kid, and watched it every year after that. I mean, to be fair, as time drew on, obviously as Damon retired, I didn't have another favourite driver. I used to just enjoy watching the racing. So, that I was pretty much hooked from that point on. So yeah, I mean, Murray was an icon in my view. So I think my commentary style is sort of, I think he's definitely an inspiration to me. I think.
Nice.
So are you quite conscious then of your style? Are you quite conscious of like your brand as a commentator? Is that something that you review and work on, or do you try and keep it completely, totally natural and reactive?
More so, I think I've gone about it in a natural way for a long time. I mean, I've sort of had to look at myself a little bit more now, because it is my life now, and it's my profession. So I've got to, just in the modern age we live in, and the way we work, and obviously social media being a very powerful platform and tool, you almost do have to create that sort of brand aura around yourself, and that is something I've had to learn and develop, and I'm still learning. And I think that's why I enjoy doing all this. It's like every day's a lesson. I learn something new every day. But yeah, I am working on the whole brand side of things. Like I started to brand the name George Morgan TV. That is my name on like Twitch, and it's how I personify myself on on all my social media platforms. But I'm still just George, same George that has been doing commentary since league racing, or the same guy you might have spoken to in a pub, or the same guy you've spoken to anywhere. But I've just got a huge passion for what we do. I mean, I'm immensely passionate about the league racing community. Still am. I always get involved. Watch the races as well. I still tune into PSGL and WOR and whatever it may be that's on, and obviously F1 esports too, and even iRacing and ACC. I love all that stuff. Yeah.
Right now, sim racing is kind of reminding me of the days when, I know it's a little bit different, but like when Twitch first started or when YouTube first started. The opportunities are so large right now, because sim racing isn't like huge and massive as, let's say, Call of Duty League or League of Legends or anything like that. So I feel like a lot of these younger commentators, or even old guys like me that maybe want to start talking into a microphone, could probably have some pretty good opportunities in that world right now.
Absolutely.
So, and your story,
we've had some great stories.
Your story inspires. I mean, you're just, you're a normal league commentator where your buddies were like, "Hey, you're not fast enough. Get on the microphone," which could be my future, Tom, with my
It's not a bad future, man.
Driving.
It's not a horrendous future.
I mean, we mentioned it a few times.
Yeah, your life doesn't end. If you're off the pace, it just does that. It doesn't. There's a future for everybody. But we had some great things happen this year. I mean, there was one story that came out this year, and there's a guy who follows me on Twitter, and I follow him too. A guy called Colin Rowlands Mason, I think his name is, and his father competes in league racing too, and his father's 67 years of age, and he got his first league race win in a league this year in One Hub, I think it is, One Hub Racing, and it was like one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. He was streaming live. You could hear the jubilance and the passion behind it, and this is league racing. To some normal human being who's just watching outside the box, knows nothing about league racing, probably wonder, what is he on? Like, literally, I mean, but for those who are actually involved, like for those who are actually understand what's happening, it was an amazing moment, and Colin was obviously overjoyed. His father was as well. The guys at One Hub were like, oh my god, this is unbelievable, and I thought it was great. And it's just moments like that is what really it's what this community is all about, really. Do you know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing I love, to be honest. Yeah.
I mean, that's some pretty wholesome content. But you've definitely moved up a level from league racing to the bigger gigs, right? I want to know what it was like when you got your first gig that was going to be recorded in a studio, because you're one of the few commentators that come from sim racing, but we see you in front of the camera with like a big fancy LED backdrop and maybe a desk or a sofa, and you've got presenters, and it's walk in at this time and you're all mic'd up, and it's very kind of showbiz, right? How was that first experience? Did you just take to it, or were you like, holy crap, this is not what I'm used to. I'm used to being in my bedroom.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there was some tentative nerves. I think, obviously stepping in. I think to the. I mean, I remember V10R League because that was my first job at Gfinity. That was my first experience working with that organisation. Obviously, they're a well-known. Obviously they push the F1 esports side. They're the ones who produce the show. They back it, and they're the ones who bring it. And obviously, walking into the Gfinity arena for the first time in London was pretty special. I mean, the thing is, doing stuff live in a what's considered a professional capacity wasn't necessarily new to me at that time, because I used to be in a rock band as well, and I actually toured 3 times. I'd headlined the O2 Academy in Birmingham as well, and things like that. So I thought, look,
what was the band called?
Play a band called Thousand Fingers. Yeah, we didn't go immensely far, but we played like festivals, and we did various.
That's
things,
very cool.
You know, that's still playing.
Yeah,
out.
I mean, it was like it was my sort of releasing my creative side. You know, me and my friends again from school, we just wanted to get together, play music, and have a bit of fun on the weekends, and it turned into a little bit of something. You know, we played the O2. I can always say I headlined the O2 Academy, and
probably
that was in
the
front
nerves
of
a little bit when you're in front of the camera, because you've been performing on stage before, so kind of have your wits about you still.
Well, I think if you have the ability to sing badly and play bass badly live in front of 600 people in an arena, I think I'd say that's you can't really get heavier than that, really. So there are benefits to that. I mean, obviously there was always that nerves because obviously it's live TV. V10R League was being broadcasted on BT Sport at the time as well, and that's obviously big pressure because you're basically thrown into the lion's den at that point. And as soon as I got started and the show started, I just sank into it. I just treated it as if it was a Thursday night covering PSGL, and it was great. Really loved every moment of it, and we took that all the way to Abu Dhabi, and that was a lot of fun too, getting to travel over there. And then obviously that was the precursor to doing F1 esports and various other events too.
That's absolutely amazing. So when you're, I guess, polishing your craft, we'll say, do you ever just like watch the PSGL or any of the streamers out there and kind of commentate to yourself, where you're like just trying to keep your wits sharp, and maybe the track is coming up for an official event, so you kind of commentate to yourself just to practice?
Yeah, I suppose I do in a way. I mean, I do like to because I stream on Twitch and stuff like that, and I do like F1 Manager, and obviously my community on my Discord and my Twitch, obviously they know I'm a commentator. It's like the elephant in the room every time I'm broadcasting. So it would be rude of me not to say commentate the start of the F1 Manager race that I'm doing or something, and and then upload it to TikTok. I mean, it's a hash thing that you put together, but it is some form of practice at the same time.
I see it the same as like going in the backyard and throwing with your mates or something like that to practice football or kicking around a ball on a school field. Just you got to keep yourself sharp, and for me, if I was to ever commentate, I'd have to have like a map up of all the turn names and all the turn numbers and everything, and I'd have to play it scientifically so that I'd remember everything. But
that's a must, actually. that's a must because notes are vital. I mean,
Yeah.
that's that. I mean, I always put hours and days of preparation in before I fly anywhere and cover anything. So
How do you remember all the turns of all the tracks? And do you just every single time you go to a new one or commentate a new one, you have to just refresh yourself each time, or?
I think it's just the amount of times I've done it in league racing. Like,
Okay.
there's not very many circuits that I've been to this year that I haven't already commentated on in like PSGL or WR or something like that. Like,
That makes sense.
you know, I mean, I take a track map with corner names on it just in case I have a blank moment, or just in case the brain stops working for a couple of seconds or something.
Of course.
But generally it's not needed. Like, I put it up on the wall and I might not even look at it, so you've just wasted 3 days of research.
It's the magic what's the statement? Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it,
Yeah. Well, you're only as good as your preparation, and
True.
and at the same time, I wouldn't want to be committed to a championship as such that obviously I'm excited to do, and not give it my best effort. I'd want to, try and, not only bolster, the perception of my work, but also the championship as well, because the broadcast is a reflection of the championship. So you've got to. It's a lot of pressure, but at the same time, if you put the work in and the effort and the prep, should I say, then it's it makes it more valuable, makes it more entertaining. So that's very important to me. Yeah.
So here's a question, George. Some people will say that there's no such thing as a boring race, that there's always something going on the field that you could talk about. But we all know that there is such a thing as a boring race. What do you do if, sadly, you come across a boring race and you're struggling to find things to talk about?
There's always something to talk about. Trust me. I don't fall for any of that. I mean, the thing is, a race is what thing with a race, right? I mean, when people say it's a boring race and there's not many overtakes, you've got to extrapolate the level of detail in the race as well. Maybe talk about some of the drivers' histories too. There's always something to talk about. The strategies, the tires, anything. I mean, we had a situation. Obviously, Euro Formula this year, we struggled a little bit on the grid sizes. We had Van Amersfoort pull out midway through. DriveX, had a reduced number of cars towards the end of the season, and there were quite a few occasions where we had 6 to 10 cars. But the racing was always brilliant. Like, we always had battles around every corner. We had a few scary moments, like when Christian Mansell's car tipped over at Monza after a little bit of contact with Francesco Simonazzi, but the racing in itself was spectacular. And and I think I said to someone in the TikTok, they said, not very many cars, not very exciting, is it? And I said, well, the number of cars doesn't really dictate as to how exciting the racing actually is. If anything, I would say the drivers probably have the ability to risk more in a small field. Therefore, it makes them, it makes them go for those, really bold moves or something like that. But I don't believe in that whole thing. I think there's always a way. I mean, if you're a good commentator, and I think if you enjoy and you're passionate about something, you'll have no problem making it exciting. And I think, and the audience are really smart too. And I think, just based off your passion, I think the audience can feel your passion. They'll know if you're being real or not. And that I've noticed that the audience are very smart, and they know, if I'm excited, because they'll get in on it too, and they'll be just as crazy as I am. So yeah, it's like for like in that sense, I think. So.
Have you found the real world of, to coin a horrible phrase, the traditional motorsport, real world motorsport, physically going to the track, standing in a commentary box, being able to go and physically meet the drivers before or after the race, if indeed that's been possible in the past? Have you found that transition?
Brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. Actually, the first day I went there, I actually walked the track at Estoril. Estoril is the first circuit I have ever been to. And it's also the first circuit that I've ever commentated at. And it will always hold an important place with me, or an important position with me. And the drivers this season in like Euroformula and GT Open and GT Cup have been absolutely brilliant. Frecker as well, because obviously I did 2 races with Formula Regional European Championship, which was amazing. Valentino Rossi came into the media center while I was in there too. He literally sat behind me. All of a sudden, I could hear this microphone and I could hear Valentino Rossi's voice, and I was just turning around. I was like, "Oh, it's Valentino Rossi." Yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, and also I got given this special gift as well from a young driver called Ollie Goethe and his driver coach Stuart Hall, which is basically the Rothko collection. It's like a full book. I haven't actually opened it yet, so I'm actually a bit nervous about taking it out. But yeah, they presented me with this gift, and basically Roll Goethe, who is Ollie's father, he owns a museum in Hampshire, which is a collection of cars that have the famous Golf livery. And they date all the way back from the 1950s, 60s. I think the 1960s mainly. But yeah, for instance, like the Golf McLaren you would have seen at Monaco last season and things like that. And they honestly, they were back in the commentary from the word go. And they said, if ever you want to come down and see the cars, you've got a personal invite from us, and we'll personally take you around. You're always invited, whenever you want. And I got to meet loads of great talents as well. I got to meet Juan Pablo Montoya. He was a really nice guy to meet. Rubens Barrichello was a frequent member of the paddock as well. And just an amazing experience, honestly. And I loved every minute of it. Yeah.
So when you're watching another, so you're just, at your house watching an F1 race or watching whatever race, and someone else is commentating, is it kind of like a sport to you? Because I was a baseball player for 19 years of my life. So when I watch baseball, I'm critical of some of the decisions that they make or the things that they're doing. And if I played the position, of course, they're the professionals, and not me on the couch is like, why would you do that? Do you, when you're watching other commentators, go, well, I don't know if I would have said that. I would have probably went with this angle. Or is it almost like they're the athletes in your mind at some points in time during the races?
I could see why that might come across, and obviously we're in the same profession, and like you say, obviously there's, everyone's chasing the job. Obviously my ambition would be to be the Formula One commentator. That's obviously where I would like to be. Who wouldn't? That's my attitude. But I mean, for instance, today I was watching the GT Cup sprint for the Motorsport Games on Sky Sports F1, and David Addison and John Watson, who I've met, they were both in the commentary box. But I mean, I never have those thoughts.
Really?
If I'm honest, I never do. I mean, when I was sat there, I was just taking an interest in the racing. There were a few drivers racing in that were competing in the International GT Open this season, so I was, sort of backing those guys because obviously I'd been commentating them on them all year long, and I'm I know them and I get on with them really well. So I was hoping that they would do well. But no, I mean, I enjoy listening to the likes of David Addison, John Watson. And what you got to remember as well is that everyone is unique. It's all well and good me criticizing David Addison or whoever, David Croft or Alex Jakes. But to be truthful, it wouldn't make any logical sense for me to do that. Mainly because we're all different. We have different styles. We say things differently. We come across differently. And I think that's what makes us great. I think that's what makes us individuals. And that's what makes certain people, I think, warm to, different commentators, as well as they have these unique styles and unique ways of making things seem and coming across. So no, I don't think I would ever criticize anybody as such. I think I'd learn.
I was going to ask, on the opposite foot, do you ever pick up things and go, oh, that's a really good idea, or something to say about XYZ driver or Absolutely, Chris. Yeah, absolutely right. Honestly, I sit there and I'll take in what they're saying, and if there's something that I can amend or bring to my offering as a commentator, then I will. If I think it sounds great. It's like I said to you earlier in the show, it's every day has been a learning experience, whether it be branding, whether it be the actual role of being a commentator, whether it be how you position yourself socially, regardless of anything, just everything's a learning day. And I think that's why I love the job,
because there's always something new to learn. And yeah, it's a real perk, I think, certainly with this position.
That's neat.
I always think that commentators have the best job because essentially a commentator is a professional fan. Like, you know,
I can see where you're getting that from.
and you kind of have to be the best. You have to be the biggest fan, right? You have to know everything about the series, and you have to have the enthusiasm and the passion to be able to watch it and then create a storyline, or not create, but portray the storyline.
No,
and in order to do that, you have
storylines out of things.
I don't.
Sorry.
I'll dispute the whole fan idea, though. I mean, I don't think you need to be. I don't think you need to be a fan to tell a story. I think being a great storyteller helps. I think being a good narrator helps. Essentially, it is entertainment as much as sport. The end of the day, and there was an old phrase that Murray Walker used to use. We're there to inform and entertain. That is what we're there to do. And you know what? He's absolutely right. That is part and parcel of the job. So I mean, what I enjoy is the racing. So I am like the normal viewer at home watching on TV, but my job is to, say what I'm thinking when I'm watching. Say this, and then if the person at home feels the same way as I do, then obviously they're going to go along with it and get excited about it. But I don't think there's necessarily a fan side of it. I mean, obviously we're all fans of motorsport and fans of motor racing, but no, I think you get on board with it. You get yourself into the intensity, into the aura of what's going on, and it just for me it just takes me away. I just it's almost like an out of body situation. It just sort of happens for me. I don't even know what I'm doing half the time. So you just go.
Are there any tracks where you know that you have to commentate for the X track and you just don't like that track at all? So it's almost like oh man, I have to do this one again. Is there any track? Really?
No.
No tracks where you just you're like,
I love
this is gonna be a boring one.
I love every track. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe on the Formula One side. I mean, do you know? I thought this was going to be a problem for me this year because obviously, I mean, I've commentated in Monaco twice now. I mean, I'm going to say I've commentated on a Monaco race once this year, obviously with Frecker, but I mean, obviously, I was there with the Sim Racing World Cup. But obviously, Monaco is a very much what I would call a Marmite circuit. You either love it or you hate it. Yeah. I mean, I thought it would be difficult, and don't get me wrong, we didn't have, I would say, a classic race in Frecker. In fact, we had a red flag that went on for the best part of most of the racing. But just being on a broadcast for a Monaco race was incredible. Being there and witnessing it firsthand when I was there only recently, obviously a week or so ago. Again, I don't think I could say anything against the circuit. I really don't think I could. I think my perception really changed when I went to see it. I think to be honest, sometimes I think a lot of tracks get a bit of a hard deal sometimes. I don't think really. I think the public ought to build an opinion based on what they see in person, I think, as opposed to what they see on TV.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting take there because, like Monaco, sitting on your couch, you're like, okay, this is kind of a blah race. But when you're at the circuit and you're standing there and all the craziness is happening, there is no way for it to be boring because you're surrounded by F1 and the fans and just the aura of the event. Yeah. Whereas you're on your couch, you're like, okay, another commercial break. Great. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, obviously everyone keeps saying, why is it still on the Formula One calendar? And do you know what? When I went there this year, I suddenly realized, you know what? I totally understand why they keep it on the calendar.
Yeah.
I totally understand. And do you know what now? If they ever said that it's up for question, I would stand by and say, look, no, Monaco has to stay because I mean it is brilliant. There's a lot of heritage, a lot of history. Monaco has fully embraced Formula One as its culture. The statues, you got the Prince Albert's Museum full of cars. Absolutely covered in cars. I took so many pictures. It was unbelievable. It's I got to see Kimi Raikkonen's Lotus. There was Lewis Hamilton's first ever Mercedes that he drove in. There was I stood right next to Ayrton Senna's helmet that he wore at Monaco when he pulled off that blistering lap. That we watched time and time again, and it's, you could see the stone chips on the helmet, and I'm like, wow. It's like, it's incredible. And it did send chills up your spine. What am I doing here? Do you know what I mean? At this amazing track with so much history, and you stand outside the casino in Monte Carlo, and you could just see everything is totally built on the fact that the Monaco Grand Prix is held there, and it is sensational. And for me, it has to stay now. My perception on it has totally changed over the years.
Well, Tom, it sounds like we have to go and experience it. So
I would recommend.
Yeah, we should probably get that done. Tick that off the list. Well, I mean, it's abundantly clear that you have a deep rooted passion for motorsports and racing, and that's coming across as you're talking about Monaco. But you also have a very deep rooted passion, from what I can glean, for league racing. It's something that, it was a big part of your early days as a commentator, and you became a bit of a figurehead for league racing. How important do you think league racing is to sim racing as an esport, and then as a vessel into motorsport generally?
In terms of its future, and for it to stay, in terms of it needing to grow, I think league racing is imperative. I think really it needs to be embraced. I think there's been lots of inroads being made. I think in recent times, and certainly we did struggle in the early days. I think quite a lot to bridge the gap between esports and league racing. But I think the guys in esports, I don't think they truly understood it. To be truthful, I don't think, like back when I was doing league racing, I was obviously quite vocal as to the importance of league racing to the public and to the community and to esports itself. Not that they might not have realized it at the time, but it is imperative. I mean, lots of the current talents you're seeing in F1 esports were all born out of league racing. I mean, I can't name a single driver on that grid that hasn't league raced in PSGL or AOR or any of that. So it's, I mean, if you look at the original grid in F1 esports, that was all league races. So it would be very foolish to continue and say we don't need league racing. That's totally the opposite of where it needs to go. PSGL is now established itself as one of the biggest leagues in the world, if not the biggest league in the world for Formula One, and regularly hitting views of when I was commentating, it was 60,000 after a week, and then you'd get like say 75,000. We'd have our own fan base. People would get excited, and people would be buzzing. When you put the stream up for the like next week's PSGL race, you'd have people in the live chat already talking about who's going to win. I mean, how cool is that? I mean,
that is amazing.
That is cool. I mean, you've essentially built something. Like people talk about Formula One, like the Mexican Grand Prix the week before it actually happens. We've got people talking about PSGL the same way. But you know what? It's great, and I think F1 esports has benefited off it because these drivers get followed from league racing, like Thomas Ronhaar now, who has now become one of the great talents at Haas F1 esports, and has now positioned himself as one of the contenders for the championship. Has been sensationally quick, but for me, that wasn't a shock because I saw him in PSGL and WR, and I knew that he was one to watch, and he's proven me right, and many others right too. So, yeah, it's great, and I think there's a bright future for league racing, and I think it's great to see that F1 esports in itself, and not just F1 esports, but various esports organisations are taking note and starting to use it to their benefit.
I think the cool part about that is, like, let's say I'm part of a league, and there's just this one elite driver that moves on to another league and then another league and then gets on to some professional esports team, right? It's almost like following a footballer through an academy. Like you see them in their infancy, if you will, and then you get to watch them all the way through when they get to the big leagues and they're on the big stage, and you're like, oh, I've been a fan of that person, or I raced with that person before all of this happened. So you almost feel that bigger connection to the driver than you would if you just like stumbled upon them in their first race in an F1 race. You know, it's
absolutely. Do you know what we can talk about Max Verstappen and about his junior career and say, look, you know, this guy was in Formula Renault and jumped all the way up straight up to Formula One. You know, skipped a couple of eras in his junior career, but you know, people could see he was special, and then all of a sudden he becomes this Formula One driver. You know, that's the best in the world champion, now a 2-time world champion. And you know what? I'm seeing young kids now, young drivers such as Dino Beganovic, who's just been crowned the Formula Regional European Championship drivers champion. You've got Andrea Kimi Antonelli now, who's just been announced as Freca driver for Prema, who has just won the Italian F4 Championship. I fully believe that he will become a great Formula One driver, maybe even a world champion in the future. And we've got, you can easily see these young talents coming through. And the great thing is about league racing, you can also use it, as I said before, in the same way. Look at the young drivers coming through in the top flights of PSGL or WR, and you can say, yes, that is going to be an F1 esports driver in a year's time. I mean, some of them are 14, 15 years of age and beating your Jana Watmirs or your Nicholas Longays or your Freddie Rasmussens. You know, it's
before they can legally drive on a road. They're
absolutely, and it is brilliant. And again, it creates great story and great narrative, and it's great because you know the fans of the leagues can then tune in and say, oh yeah, do you remember that time at PSGL Canada? You know, when Barry Burremand lost to Jana Watmir, or when Thomas Ronha won at Portimao, and things like that. It's just brilliant. You know, these are the sort of conversations we can have. You know.
I think the sim racing world, I was, because every Sim Sunday, my whole mind is just all sim racing the entire morning. And the opportunities that are out there for drivers, commentators, league managers, just there's so many different avenues in sim racing right now that can, I don't want to say like make your dreams come true, but like you can build a career off of. We've talked to Jeff McConey, who is McConey Setup Shop, right? And he was talking about how the setups that they're making, they're talking to real race engineers about how they relate in the real world because the simulators are so accurate now. So you can start to build setups and then you can kind of get yourself into the world of being in the garage if you wanted to. You being a commentator, you can get on the big stage as you've done. As a driver, we've seen a bunch of different drivers go through different things. I follow Jimmy Broadbent kind of loosely.
Yeah.
His
Great
team
guy.
won. They got the championship just recently, and he was just a sim racer for the longest time. The opportunities.
He won the Praga Cars Championship, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The opportunities that are out there for sim racing are just so many. And I said it a little bit, but it reminds me of when Twitch was like first starting. We look back now and we're like, man, if I would have just started streaming on Twitch back when it was teeny tiny, who knows what would be happening now? And we're kind of in the beginning phases in sim racing to where I don't think people should overlook this stuff. They need to look at the opportunities, make a plan, and really kind of, do what you did. If you're slow on the track, just switch to the mic and then you'll be...
Well, I mean, what I will say is this. I mean, it's you've got to. I think the one thing I will say, and I get a lot of people who message me on social media, and they'll say, I really want to be a commentator, or I really want to do this, and I'll just say to them, just do it. Just do it. If you really want to do it, just do it. And the one thing with me is that I never had plans to go full time. Never had plans to be a professional. Never had plans to be, someone who was doing this for a living, or become a professional commentator. I used to live to come home from work, log on to my PC, commentate for PSGL. That was great. If that was me for the next, I don't know, 20, 30, for how many years I can do it, then that would be, what I would do. I mean, had things not gone the way they had and my schedule become so busy to the point where I can't do it anymore, I'd probably still be doing PSGL right now. But what I would say is if you've actually got a passion for it, and you do enjoy it, then you won't have a problem stepping up onto the microphone and doing it. It is as simple as that. I do worry from time to time that I think people look at these opportunities that people get and maybe do it for the wrong reasons.
Sure.
And you've got to enjoy what you do. That is the big secret. It's no good getting into something and then, discovering, this isn't for me. The best thing you can do is literally, as you say, just get involved in the community, have a go. If you don't enjoy it, just don't do it. If you really don't enjoy it, so move on. Yeah. Find something else that you're passionate about or creative in. That's what these communities are all about. And I've been very fortunate to have the chance to do this, and I'm sure there'll be many more in the future as well. Yeah.
I mean, you haven't fallen into this. It's you didn't end up in Monaco by accident. There's a huge amount of work.
I on a banana and just fell in.
My point is that you didn't decide last month that you want to be a commentator. You put in a huge amount of groundwork, and you kind of proved your genuine passion beyond any reasonable doubt, which didn't go unnoticed by people at F1 or Gfinity or Freckert when you got called up for those jobs. So taking that into account, like what's next for you? Like you're obviously committed to this path now, right? So what's where could you see this going?
Well, good question, Tom. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't truthfully know. I mean, the opportunities are endless. I think that's the beauty of the job. Like, I discovered this year that anything can happen, because I had no idea coming into this. Like, obviously, I signed to Loudspeaker back in September last year, and which was a great moment for me. I signed a 3-year deal with them. Essentially, it was like a contract agreement of 3 years, and they basically manage my career, and they've been brilliant. They've supported me and backed me, and they're very experienced people. Gemma Scott, who is a presenter for the GT World Challenge and all of that, she's very experienced at what she does. She understands the industry. She knows the business, and she's provided me with a lot of advice and helpful feedback. Louise Beckett as well, who is the presenter for the FIA WEC, so the World Endurance Championship, and various other things as well. They're currently they're both at the Motorsport Games at the moment, doing presenting for that too at the moment. And they were the ones who we set up a meeting last year and sort of discussed what I was all about, and they said, we watched your stuff, we can see a real future in it. And I was like, well, I thought, give it a shot, who knows? And so I agreed. We put the agreement in place. All of a sudden they turned up and said, right, George, we got a meeting with the International GT Open, GT Sport. They want you as commentator. And I was like,
so
okay.
So when that happened, did you just have your stuff on your YouTube from your league racing days, or?
It was all, I had no real life stuff. Like none of my stuff was real life. This is me talking to a real life championship with no real life experience of commentating a real life race. This was me stepping up with an esports show reel, full of PSGL content. I did 2 virtual 24-hour of Barcelona races, which I put on there, and I also did some stuff with Veloce, like the squad sprint, and I also did some other stuff with different sim championships such as VCO and Race Spot and loads of different companies, who were really pushing esports. So yeah, I had nothing to show for any real life commentary. So it was very much, here's the sim racing show reel I've got. What do you think? And they were taking a huge risk. They took a huge risk, but at the same time, to me, I thought if I can present myself the same way in a real life capacity as I do in a sim racing capacity, then we're not taking a risk. I said, look, we're doing something. This is going to work. I was convincing myself this is going to work, and we had a meeting. I came across and answered every question they had. After I left the meeting, and it was just my agent and the company, and all of a sudden I got told I got the role, and I was their commentator at that point. So that was a big moment for me. Like the world stopped turning at that point for me. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
okay, we've done it. So yeah,
That's a pretty big. It's like being in the negotiation room trying to get a contract for football, and then they're like, "Yeah, you got it." And I can just imagine the emotional like wave of excitement that came through, and you're just like, "Wow,
yeah." I won't even
it.
go into. I won't even go into when I got offered to do F1 esports this year, because that was another one altogether. Like I actually stopped breathing. But yeah, that was surreal. I was actually in an airport in Vienna, waiting to fly back from Red Bull Ring, and I had a text come through. And
Did you do one of those classic movie moments? Yes, and everyone looks at you in the airport.
Well, I was curious. I don't know how they got. Well, it was kind of like that, yeah. Like I had people around me wondering what the hell was wrong with me. I was just sat there. I was sat there in the chair, and I was like this, hyperventilating, like. And then people looking at me saying, "What is wrong with this guy?" And I was there, and I was like, "Shit!" I'm gonna have to. Sorry for swearing, but yeah, I'm gonna have to make a phone call. And yeah, just literally, I had a text from someone. I had no idea how they got my number in the first place, and it had this message. We want you for F1 esports. You're going to step in for Alex Jakes, and I was like, wow, big shoes to fill. Yeah, so that was a bit surreal. I ended up phoning up my agent. And the funny thing was, they said, "Are you available?" I said, "Yeah, kind of. I am about to board a flight, so I'm going to pass you over to my agent." Sort of. I said to her, so I thought, "Oh crikey, it's a bit mad." So I phoned up Gemma, and she was like, "Oh, well done, George," and all that. She was very excited and happy for me. And I phoned my girlfriend, my fiance as well. She got very excited, and she was like, "Oh my god," And yeah, it was a crazy moment. And do you know what? Back when I was doing PSGL, the major dream I had at that point was I wanted to commentate F1 esports, and I'd finally done it. So that was quite a big moment, to be quite honest. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what is the next goal? Do you have, since you got to cross off that F1 esports one, what's the next one that gets the circle?
Well, I think it's it goes without saying. I mean, obviously, I've crossed off esports, F1 esports. I'm commentating real life motorsport now. The goal for me now is to be a Formula One commentator.
Okay.
So that's the next goal. I think it's the next logical step for me. So it's I mean, obviously, I love motorsport regardless. But obviously, to hit the heights and do what my hero Murray Walker did for so long, I think would be amazing. To have that opportunity. So yeah, we'll be pushing for that, I think. So
that'll be very cool. I'll be watching F1 TV one day and be like, he was on my podcast.
Well, you never know. I mean, this is a crazy world we live in. Anything can happen. Dreams can come true. I mean, I never fathomed doing any of what I'm doing right now at all. So to have an opportunity like that would be superb, and obviously a dream come true. So I think you've got to have goals in life, and and I think regardless if you hit them or not, you can say you've had a go and you've given it your best, and you've at the end of the day you've got to be in it to win it, haven't you? So that's
yeah.
I mean, you're definitely in it. You've had some pretty incredible experiences, been to some incredible places. You've also commentated with some really interesting people, right? And you've been to some iconic races. So what would be your standout, like, pinch me moment? Like, how the hell am I here? Is this really happening? Is this a dream? Is there one or maybe two that stand out to you?
Well, I think Monaco is obviously up there. I mean, that was bizarre. I think Spa was quite a surreal moment, because obviously I'd seen Spa on TV since '96, and since I was a kid, all of a sudden turning up and there's Eau Rouge and Raddy on, and that was pretty surreal. I'm trying to think of others. I mean, I was quite was quite cool going to Spain to go to Barcelona. That was quite a nice one to go to as well. Red Bull Ring was stunning. I loved Red Bull Ring. I thought that was great. It's like one of the most modern media centers out there, and the amount of work they've done to that track is unbelievable. I mean, they reopened it back in 2011, and they've done all the modernization. There's like, Red Bull cars in the lobby of the building, and it is stunning to go to, and set in the heart of the Styrian Mountains, which is just amazing to see. And I'd highly recommend anyone to go to that, because it'll knock your socks off straight away. And I don't think there is a bad hotel around there either. It's sensational. Like everywhere you go, it's just amazing. You've got like a postcard view out of every window. It's just stunning. But yeah, no, I'd say those places are quite surreal. Abu Dhabi was quite neat. I got to drive on the Yas Marina circuit, which was very cool. A lot of fun. I got to drive a Caterham around the track. I actually beat Hayden Gullis as well, as much as he wouldn't admit it. He doesn't like to admit it. But I overtook him coming out of turn 5, where Verstappen overtook Hamilton for the World Championship last year.
Nice.
I haven't let Hayden live it down, to be honest. But yeah, that was a cool experience. And yeah, Abu Dhabi was quite something. Yeah.
And how about co-commentators? All these different races, all these different series, you must get thrown in with different co-commentators quite often. How do you adapt to their different styles and different techniques? And which co-commentator have you been stood next to, and it's been like, wow, I'm with this person, and they've done all of this. Like, how has this happened?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with numerous amount of commentators, and all good commentators as well in their own right, and everyone is so different when you work with them. I mean, I think the craziest partnership I've ever had was when Arav was my co-commentator for the Microsoft GP with Veloce. That's very cool. Crazy. That was amazing. I've obviously worked with Matt Gallagher with F1 Esports. That was quite something too. And obviously Ian Silvestrin, who commentates Italian F4. I've commentated with Adam Weller as well, who is a very busy GT commentator. He's and a very young commentator as well. He actually started at the tender age of 13 and 14 years old. He was thrown into the deep end with commentary. And
wow. Adam is inspirational. He's very, very funny. Yeah. He actually he commentated on our enduro car race at Snetterton. So I was lucky enough to meet him there. And he's a real character. He's a character, yeah. Yeah. So friendly.
Like he is really friendly. We used to have a lot of fun. Just walking around the paddock and have a laugh with the drivers, and it was great. I've done a lot of traveling with Chris McCarthy as well, because obviously we share the same agency, and myself and Chris are very, very good friends, and we get on. I've met Paul Jeffrey as well, who does the TCR as well, and I also met met countless names through my travels. Chaz Draycott, who does esports commentary too, and
big fan of Chaz.
Does a lot. Yeah, he does Gran Turismo content, and he's been doing stuff with like Trak Racing and Renault Clio Cup, and it's great. Alex Jakes drops me a message quite a bit, so I get to speak to Alex, and yeah, he's a really nice guy. He was really supportive of me, and he was straight up with me. He said, any questions you have, just don't hesitate to ask, he said. I quite like that. He was a very helpful human being when I got started.
So when you go into a booth, or you're on a stream with another commentator, and let's say you or them is the more seasoned vet, is there like an unspoken or even spoken agreement between who's like the lead commentator versus who's like the backup commentator? Are there roles like that when you're with another presenter?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I think you sort of go with the flow with it, really. I mean, when I first walked into the International GT Open, I was very conscious that it was my first time in a commentary box for a real life championship. So I didn't want to put myself into a position where I would throw myself in the deep end. Because you've got to be conscious of the fact, regardless of what you've done in sim racing, effectively you're starting from square one at this point.
Mm.
And I thought, I'm there to learn as much as I am there to obviously show what I can do. So when I started working with Adam with GT Open at the start of the season, I was very conscious of letting him start and get the ball rolling, just so I could find my feet and get, which didn't take too long, to be quite honest. I think after the first broadcast, I think I felt that I could probably have done it comfortably from the word go. But I mean, it would still. I didn't want to do anything to jeopardize the show.
Sure.
So I thought, look, let's take it a step at a time. Obviously Adam went off to do like GT Masters and things like that after, so it put me in a position to take over the show then when he left. So when Ian Silvestrin came in, Ian took position of the number 2, and I did the number 1 role.
Okay.
So to the end of the season, then it gave me an opportunity to lead the broadcast. So yeah, it was a good way of doing it. I think just sort of find your feet, get stuck into it,
Sure.
and then for the rest of the season, I was able to really sink my teeth into it. I mean, I've led a few broadcasts now for different championships. I mean, Frecker I led as well when Chris wasn't available, because you only have one commentator for Frecker, so you don't have anyone alongside you. So you lead that commentary from start to finish. Which is obviously, again, a lot of pressure, a different situation to place yourself in. I hadn't done a lot on my own in the past. So obviously taking the reins of Frecker was extraordinary, and the first time I did it was obviously the weekend of the 24-hour of Spa, so that was quite something too. So, but yeah, no, it's all a learning curve. Like I said before, it's important to learn and adapt every day, really.
Well, we've been lucky enough on this podcast to have a few commentators. So we've had yourself, and we had Paul Jeffrey, and we've had Chris Buxton. We also had Alex Goldschmidt on the show, who's just asked us a question for you, saying, how's it been with International GT Open this season, doing sports cars specifically?
It's been really enjoyable, and I've loved it. And in fact, it's enhanced my knowledge and understanding of that sort of racing, because obviously when you grow up and from a young age back in the 90s, there wasn't a plethora of opportunities to watch GT3s or sports cars. I mean, everything was Formula One. You could watch touring car, back in the day, because that was on television.
Right.
So this was, I mean, obviously I played a set of Corsa Competizione prior to obviously commentating the GT Open, but I hadn't been exposed to it like I had been to Formula One. So it was very much a learning curve for me. But stepping into it, I very quickly got into the whole craze of it, and sort of meeting the drivers, and you very quickly understand how amazing it really is, and the amount of jeopardy that's on the line too, because you've got obviously it's in pit stops. You've got the driver changes, the driver comes out, driver steps in. If there's any delay in the pit stop time, it could be the difference between winning or losing a race, much like Formula One. And it's so easy to get wrapped up in all the drama of it. Like we had a great moment towards the end of the season. In fact, the last race of the season, where the championship was on the line. It was the Optimum Motorsport McLaren and the Lamborghini. And the Lamborghini, because they'd done so well the day prior, they had a 10-second handicap coming into the final race that they had to serve in the pit lane when they do their stop. So they led all the way, and obviously the McLaren that was just below 10 seconds behind them obviously came in for their pit stop as well. Actually jumped them in the pit stop phase, and there was 8 points difference between them in the championship, obviously in favour of the Lamborghini, but obviously because Joe Osborne, who is an experienced British GT driver, stepped in the McLaren, he literally flew out of the pit lane and was going for literally trying to claim the championship. Obviously he didn't succeed in the end, but it was amazing to have that jeopardy, and we were able to draw on that as a storyline as such, and really, and the audience were like, wow, this could be quite something, so it's great when you've got those moments, and it's enough to get anyone excited about a race, so
there's essentially an unlimited different number of classifications of cars. Is there only a set grouping of cars or type of racing that you will commentate, or are you kind of open to everything and you'll just hop in and see how it goes?
I'm well. Racing for me is racing. I mean, it's it's competitive action. I mean, it's no different than when I was doing esports. I mean, I was covering Formula One. I was covering ACC, iRacing. I was doing absolutely everything. So I mean, I was open to anything and everything, and it's great because again, you learn. You discover new championships, new series, and you research it, and you speak to the drivers, understand their backgrounds, their history. What is their future going to be? And it's fascinating and really enjoyable. And I would say it's probably one of the most exciting things about the job because you do learn a lot. And
Man,
I
just
just think it's
constantly
great.
picking up new info.
Yeah, it's incredible, and the racing itself is always great. There's always something to get excited about, new teams, and you might meet the odd legend in the paddock as well that you can speak to, and it's phenomenal. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
So you've told us that your sim racing lap times are a little slower. Do you still sim race?
I do still sim race, yeah, for my sins. Yeah. I'm not very good still. Yeah, some things never change. To come the phrase, but yeah, no, I've been doing some racing with Symphony of Pistons.
Okay.
I've been
nice.
in their league doing some GT3s and on a Wednesday night. I've had a couple of rough races. I mean, the first one was a bit of a baptism of fire. It was a wet race around Kyalami. And as someone who tends to spend a lot of his time on ACC in the dry, this was my very first experience in the wet. And the first experience in the wet was in a league race. So I was like, oh dear. And I didn't come into it very well prepared either because I just come back from a hectic weekend away. So obviously stepping into it, it was pretty helter-skelter. I think I got lapped. I think 2 or 3 times. So yeah, it was a learning curve. But again, I think everyone has to go through those spells. I think it's just a case of just sticking with it and just learning every day. I'm very fortunate, obviously, to know a few guys in the sim racing world, and they help me a lot too. And obviously with setups and understanding how different things work. And yeah, no, it's good fun. Yeah,
So
it's all about enjoyment.
you mentioned, I can't remember if you mentioned it before the stream or on the stream, but you stream on Twitch.
Yeah.
Do you typically do the sim racing stuff or more commentating stuff? What do you normally do on your channel?
Well, I love F1 Manager. When that
Okay.
came out, that was like incredible. When that came out, that was like fourth wall, groundbreaking. I was like, yeah, this is as someone who used to play the Football Manager games, to all of a sudden have F1 Manager was like, basically combining my love of Formula One management style games together to create this wonderful, new game, this new unbelievable platform. And started doing that, commentating over the races, and on Twitch as at the same time doing the strategies and things like that.
That almost seems like the perfect game for a commentator to be able to stream.
You're
on
absolutely
Twitch.
right. It is. It's perfect. Honestly, I was in love. Honestly, and I just could not contain my excitement. I literally, the very first thing I loaded a save, I said, "Right, guys, we're streaming this." Yeah, we're doing this. So yeah, I started streaming this on Twitch, and then I would just snip little segments that I would do and stick them on TikTok or Instagram, and they've been quite popular. To be fair, I think my first clip, I managed to get Pierre Gasly to win in an AlphaTauri in season 1 at Imola.
Oh,
there were like
Nice.
3 safety cars, and I think it's managed to amass like 145,000 hits, I think, or something on
Nice.
TikTok, which is pretty crazy. So that was my first viral video.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure whether it's viral. I think to be viral, I think it's got to be like millions, isn't it, or something like that. I don't know, but
there's different levels,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, we can call it viral.
I did get a million hits. I mean, I didn't personally, but the GT Cup Open Instagram account, obviously they upload segments of my commentary off the streams that we do for the International GT Open GT Cup, and we got a million hits on the GT Cup commentary. And I remember walking into the paddock at Barcelona, and there's a young guy who does social media there called Pablo, and he was so excited. like really excited. He came up to me in the paddock. It was like, George, come here. We got 1 million hits. It's like
That's very cool.
Wow. Yeah. So it's amazing when you get those little moments because you can celebrate together with everyone involved, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's great.
So my question then is, when you're not uploading racing to TikTok, not doing racing by doing sim racing, streaming racing by doing F1 Manager, or commentating racing by commentating, what do you do? What else does George Morgan do when he's not doing anything to do with racing?
Well, I got to throw my fiance somewhere in the mix, haven't I? I mean, she does exist. I think in this somehow. No, I mean we bought a house this year, which we've been doing.
Congratulations.
Here in Wales. So I thank you. Because we're getting married next year, so that's
congratulations again
on the list of priorities. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's obviously an exciting moment that's going to come up for us. But yeah, I've been working a lot on this place, getting it fit for purpose. I just recently, I've been driving a mini digger around here for the first part of the year, sort of landscaping my driveway, knocking down a few walls here and there, so I can park my cars in here and things like that. And we got a nice view of the Skirrid Mountains as well here in in our property. A little bit of garden space and land, and we can go for walks up the mountains and go to the pub or something like that. So that's always nice. But
that's
probably
the digital detox you need, right?
Oh yeah,
absolutely. I think what I've come to learn, and you can, too much of a good thing can sometimes be unhealthy. You've got to step away sometimes and just rest and relax. And I do enjoy going out with my friends, here in Wales, and having a good time, just sort of just relieve that. Don't get me wrong, there's never a stressful day when I'm doing this job, but obviously if you're traveling a lot, it can take its toll, like anything can. So it's nice sometimes to let your hair down and just have a good night with good friends and family, and that's always important. Yeah, we
see that a little bit. It's kind of interesting when you nowadays, since we see all the social media and everything like that, Facebook, however you plan on sharing your photos, it's interesting that we get a little bit more of an inside look at some of these celebrities' lives. So like when we're hearing you on F1 Esports, we're thinking, oh, it's George Morgan from F1 Esports. And then your friends are just like, oh, that's just George. It's just one of the guys.
I mean,
and sometimes we forget about that there's like these celebrities have this other normal Joe life outside of like you're doing your yard work just like any normal dude would do. And
I mean, I was actually told recently, I mean, Stephanie Wentworth, who is who works with me a lot, we did the Sim Racing World Cup together in Monaco, and she said, you're gonna have to be prepared for people to meet you in the street and stuff like that, and Gemma said the same as well. My agent, everyone, they've all said, it can happen. And she actually asked out of curiosity, has anyone ever done that to you yet? And it just recently, it's starting to happen. Okay. I was in Morrison's in my local supermarket the other week, and there was a guy who stopped me as I was looking in the frozen food section, and just sort of asking about my travel schedule. As to, and I was saying, I'm traveling here. He said, oh, it's brilliant and all that. And then I was in Wetherspoons last night having a drink with my mates, and they were about
painting a glorious picture of you here.
Well, I know. Well, I was in Wetherspoons just having a couple of drinks with my friends, and all of a sudden I had about 4 guys come round, and they were coming round and asking me questions, and it was don't get me wrong, it's always nice. But it was nice actually because they were all dressed up in like Halloween costumes, like there was one guy dressed as a skeleton and another person dressed as a witch or something. I don't know. But yeah, we were just talking about Formula One, about Max Verstappen. We also got talking about Andrea Kimi Antonelli as well, who I think is going to be this next great driver, and stuff like that. And yeah, it's quite nice, because you can talk about racing to other passionate people who enjoy sport as well. So,
I mean, we're essentially just doing the same thing.
We are exactly the same. In fact,
we're just using the guise of a podcast to cover it up.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's important to be open, and I socialize very easily. So, I haven't got a problem speaking to anybody. So it's all good.
I wonder if there's ever going to be that, like, let's say you do get up to the F1 commentary level, right? I wonder if there's ever going to be that tipping point to where you're like, just leave me alone, please. Don't even talk to me if you recognize me, kind of a thing.
I think that would be a terrible shame. I think if that ever happened to me,
right.
I think I think even I would probably be very disappointed in myself. I think if that ever happened to me, because I've always been someone, like, I've grown up as a very people-friendly person. I'll talk to anybody, and I would never ever consider myself too important or too, oh, he's this level type thing. I don't believe that
I'm
exists.
above
I don't
everyone,
believe that
kind
exists.
of a
Yeah. No,
Well, it's kind of a topical point actually this weekend, because in I think just before we went onto this podcast, I saw a story pop up about the Mexican Grand Prix, and Lando Norris has made a bit of a plea to fans to be a little bit less intrusive and crowding. I think there were pictures of him getting like crowded as he's trying to walk through the paddock. So it's an interesting balance to strike, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, I think with those drivers, I think it's a different thing, because there's a lot more at stake, I think, with them than me as such. I think some people can go too far. I think sometimes, it doesn't matter. It could be anybody. I mean, people get stalkers or anyone like that spearing through your garden hedge or something like that. And it's
we've taken a turn here.
It's frightening. Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, it's a frightening thing. You wouldn't want someone taking a picture of you walking down the street, would you? I mean, it's just. I mean, I can understand that being a bit frightening and creepy. I mean, I don't mind people coming up and having a chat. I mean, like I say, I socialize with anybody, but yeah, I don't know. I think there are levels. There is a limit, in terms of how far you go with something. I mean, having a chat is one thing, but taking random pictures on the street.
Yeah, it's almost like, I would almost prefer someone be like, hey, can I take a selfie with you? Rather than like just hiding off in the side and be like, click, 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 click.
Yeah, exactly. Because it does look a bit weird.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, George, we're about at just over an hour, and that's typically where we like to kind of cut it off for the podcast listeners for their drives or whatever. But is there anything that you want to share with the viewers and listeners? Your Twitch stream URLs and socials, whatever you want to share.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can find me on various platforms. I mean, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at George Morgan TV. It's all the same, just George Morgan TV.
Nice.
And just find me on all those channels. If ever you want to chat, feel free to drop me a DM. That's pretty much it. You can find all my content on there. TikTok and Twitch, like I say, both George Morgan TV as well. So you can find me on there. I stream as much as I can, but I really don't have a schedule. So, yeah,
well, hopefully for your sake, you're not able to stream as much as you want to because you're commentating F1 and doing that.
That's a good problem to have. I think that's a good problem to have. Yeah,
I'm hoping that one of these days I tune into F1 TV and I'm like, wait, that's George Morgan. What?
Well, that would
be. He got
that would be nice. I mean, I'm very appreciative of everything I've received. It's far beyond my expectations. And I just enjoy every day. That's basically all it is. And I'm very grateful to you guys as well for having me on this brilliant podcast as well. You guys do an awesome job, and a big thank you for your kindness and your time as well.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show, George. I think we should manifest the future. Chris, let's call this podcast Future F1 commentator George Morgan talks about blah blah.
Just on now.
And then manifest it.
Can we put a spot like right after you do your first race, then you come back on the show and we're like, you made it. Welcome back.
I'll happily come back. No problem at all.
That would be amazing.
If it happens.
Well, you heard him. George Morgan TV all over social. Go ahead and follow him there. Catch him on one of his live streams and ask him any question that we may not have gotten to during this show. Tom, do you have anything last to say before we leave?
Nope. Just thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, y'all. We will be
Thank you,
back
guys.
next week at the normal everyday time, which is 8 p.m. UK time, because we won't be overlapping an F1 race that week, so that'll be nice. And then, of course, this episode sponsored by Trak Racer. If you're looking to upgrade your sim rig or, get off that desk-mounted setup, go ahead and go over to trakracer.com. Other than that, we will see you next week. And this podcast will be released on Monday. And George, thanks again, sir. It was a fabulous show.
Hey, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chris, as well. Honestly, it's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.